In this recording, we'll be focusing on the impact of your financial strategy on key ratios of the business. This is thinking about how our decisions as a financial manager can make an impact to the numbers. We're going to start with a bit of an introduction to the financial ratios that you need to be aware of. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list, but it's a flavour of the kind of things that they expect you to know. By this stage of your studies, I'd expect that you know most of these financial ratios already. It's things like gearing, or our PE ratio, or return on capital employed, or profit margins. You'll have met them all before, I'm sure. But just in case you haven't, we'll be going through some of the key ones. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but we'll go through the formulas for some of those key ones. And then we'll look at an example to show you how this kind of thing gets tested. So the introduction, first of all. You need to know formulas in 4 different main areas: profitability, debt, liquidity, and investor ratios. So the kind of things that are included. Under profitability ratios, you're likely to see profit margins, gross profit margin, net profit margin, and return on capital employed or return on investment. Under the debt ratios, things like gearing and interest cover, which you'll have seen elsewhere. Liquidity ratios, things like the current and quick ratios, things like your receivable days, payable days, inventory days, the days calculations. And investor ratios, things like total shareholder return, which I'm sure you've seen elsewhere, dividend yield, PE ratio, and another one, earnings per share. So what we're going to do on the next few slides is go over the formulas for each of these. But I'd say before we do that, why don't you have a go at trying to write down all of those formulas? See if you can pull them out of your long-term memory. And if you can, the rest of this recording is just going to be a bit of a recap for you. So the profit margin, profitability calculations. The profit margin for something like a gross profit margin, we take our gross profit and divide it by revenue. And it'll be a percentage, you times it by 100. If it's net profit margin, it's net profit over revenue. If it's operating profit, it's operating profit over revenue. Anything margin is talking about as a percentage of revenue. And obviously the higher the better. Return on capital employed next. Do you remember the formula for that one? Well, it's return on capital employed. And the return level is your profit before interest and tax. The reason it's PBIT is because that is the first level of profit out of which the company can pay a return to its investors. It pays its debt return, interest, out of that level of profit. Capital employed, well, the main way of calculating that is looking at the bottom half of your statement of financial position. You take the shareholders' funds, so that's the equity bit, and add long-term debt. Next, our debt ratios, gearing and interest cover. Do you remember the formulas for these? Well, gearing is either debt over equity or it's debt over debt plus equity, either as a ratio or a percentage, and the question could ask you to do it on book or market values. Interest cover, PBIT over interest, and that's looking at how many times can you cover your interest payment with the level of profit out of which you pay that interest. It's a very common debt covenant. We want as high an interest cover as possible, and as lower gearing is better because it's lower risk, less debt. Next, our liquidity ratios. Did you remember these ones? The current ratio is current assets over current liabilities, and that measures the ability of the company to pay its current debts, its short-term debts, as they fall due. Now, that's a reasonable approximation of how able we are to pay our debts as they fall due, but the quick ratio is even better, because it strips out inventory. Inventory is not a very liquid asset. If you think of the stock of the business, it needs to be sold and then the debt's collected before you've got enough cash there to be able, or you've got the cash available to be able to pay your short-term debts. So the quick ratio is a better measure. And with these, the higher the number, the better. That shows you are more liquid, more able to pay your liabilities. Although saying that, having lots of current assets might be a bit inefficient for the business. Too much cash tied up in these things. The days calculations for things like receivable days, well, they all follow the same pattern. On the top, you have a balance sheet number, something like receivables, And on the bottom, you have the related income statement number. So receivables, that's credit sales. That's the best one. But for most businesses, you might just be given sales. So receivables over sales, and you times it by 365 to turn it into days. If it's inventory over cost of sales. If it is payable days, it's payables over, again, cost of sales is probably your best approximation. Investor ratios now. Total shareholder return, which you've seen elsewhere, that's the dividend and capital gain on each share, divided by the share price at the start of the year times by 100. The higher the better. PE ratio is a measure of market confidence, isn't it? The market price per share, so P on the top, and the earnings per share, E on the bottom, P divided by E. So you can do that per share, or you can do it in total. The market capitalisation of the business divided by the profit after tax. Dividend yield, finally. Here we take the dividend per share and divide it by the market price per share and times by 100 to turn it into a percentage. And that shows relative to how much someone is investing in that share, the market price, what they're paying for it, what return are they getting, what's the dividend they're getting. A higher percentage is a better return. Okay, so that's all the formulas. We're now going to have a look at an example question. So we're told that Lucy Co. has 15 million $1 shares in issue, trading at $2.40. So that's their market price. She's got retained earnings of $3 million. She's been doing all right in the past. And she's got no debt whatsoever, so gearing 0. Lucy's going to issue 5 million new shares at $2.30 per share and will spend that money on new machinery. Profit after tax is forecast to increase significantly by 2.5 million, so from 1.5 million to 4 million because of this new investment. And we're asked, what's the forecast impact on EPS? What happens to EPS because of this investment, earnings per share? And we're asked, how might shareholders react to this? Now, we're going to go through this fully in a second, but I'd like you to have a stab at it yourself, and you'll need to do a bit of problem solving here. So pause the recording and have a go at this before we go through it together. Okay, welcome back. So you might have been thinking, we went through all those formulas and EPS wasn't in there. There was nothing about earnings per share. And that's quite typical in this exam. They throw random things at you and they expect you to be able to problem solve. So EPS stands for earnings per share, is the earnings of the business divided by the number of shares. The relevant earnings number is the earnings that's available to shareholders. That's your profit after tax. So profit after tax divided by the number of shares. So let's run through this then. So let's work out the current earnings per share first of all. And that's our profit after tax at the minute, which is 1.5 million, divided by the number of shares, which is 15 million. Lovely. We've got a current earnings per share of 10 cents. Now, what's going to happen to that EPS after this investment? So it's still going to be the same formula, profit after tax divided by the number of shares. What's going to happen to profit after tax? It's going to go up to 4 million. Lovely. But we're going to issue some new shares. There's 5 million new ones. So there used to be 15, add in 5 new ones, and now we're up to 20 million. So my earnings per share is going to 20 cents. So what is the forecast impact on EPS? Well, it's going to double. It's going to go from 10 cents to 20 cents, an increase of 10 cents. So how might our shareholders react to this? Well, they're being asked to put in $2.30 extra to buy an extra share. And as a result, they're going to earn, the earnings per share is going to go up from 10 cents to 20 cents. So how are they likely to react? Well, invest $2.30 to earn an extra 10 cents per year. If we're only earning 10 cents extra a year, that's going to take 23 years to add up to the £2.30 that I'm putting in. That's not particularly great in terms of a payback. So this doesn't look great on these numbers. So it's likely that our investors won't want to put more money in. Our shareholders will react negatively. Let's now summarise what we've been through in this recording. So we started with that introduction, didn't we? Just going through what the 4 main areas of ratios are that you need to be aware of for this course. And it's not an exhaustive list. We then went through some of those financial ratios so you're comfortable with the formulas before we practice that example looking at impact on EPS.